Dr. Evelyn Hart had only worked at St. Augustine Memorial Hospital for 3 weeks when the whispers began. It was her first solo night shift in the East Wing, a section of the hospital long rumored to be haunted. Of course, Evelyn didn't believe in such things. She was a woman of science, and the supernatural had no place in her world. Still, the staff had warned her, half-jokingly, about the East Wing. They told stories of sudden cold drafts, flickering lights, and, most unsettling of all, disembodied voices in the walls. That night, as the clock struck 2:17 a.m., Evelyn sat in the nurse's station reviewing patient charts. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sterile glow on the white tile floors. It was quiet, too quiet for a hospital in the heart of New York City. Then she heard it, a soft whisper, like breath against glass, just behind her ear. She spun around. No one was there. The hallway was empty. "Probably just the air vents," she muttered, forcing a nervous laugh. But the air vents didn't explain the words. She was certain she had heard her name. "Evelyn!" She tried to shake it off and return to her paperwork, but moments later the sound came again, this time from the wall directly behind her. Louder, closer. "Help me!" Heart pounding, Evelyn grabbed her stethoscope and pressed it against the wall. There was nothing at first. Silence. Then, a faint thudding, like a heartbeat. Then a scream, distant, muffled, and desperate. She stumbled backward, her breath shallow. Her rational mind scrambled for answers. Old pipes, a patient in another room. But the East Wing was empty. No patients, no staff, just her, and the voice in the wall. Evelyn tried to tell herself she was imagining things, a symptom of fatigue in the isolation of the night shift, but the fear clung to her like a second skin. Still gripping her stethoscope, she walked briskly down the corridor, peering into the empty rooms of the East Wing. The walls seemed to pulse with every footstep, the overhead lights flickering with an almost deliberate rhythm. She stopped in front of room 616. The door was slightly ajar. She hesitated. That room, like the rest of the East Wing, was supposed to be unoccupied, abandoned even, but now pale light spilled from inside. A faint beep echoed, like a heart monitor. Evelyn pushed the door open. Inside, the room looked fresh, sterile and clean, unlike the dust-covered halls outside. The bed was made, a monitor beeped steadily beside it, though nothing was plugged in. The only item on the bedside table was a patient chart. Drawn by a strange pull, she walked over and opened the file. Patient, unknown. Admitted August 13th, 1999. Condition, catatonia. Status, unresponsive. Notes. Staff report visual disturbances. Room reassigned indefinitely. Her eyes caught the last entry, scribbled in hurried handwriting. Do not engage. He listens. He learns. Suddenly, the monitor flatlined. A loud, high-pitched tone pierced the room. The door slammed shut behind her. Evelyn spun around, heart pounding. The room was dimming, the lights sputtering like a dying candle. She reached for the door handle. It wouldn't budge. Locked. Then she heard it again. "Evelyn!" This time, the voice came from the bed. She turned. The sheets were moving. Slowly they rose as if something beneath them had just taken a breath. "No," she whispered. "No one is in here." But the shape beneath the blanket grew more defined. Shoulders, arms, a face. Its mouth opened, and it screamed. A scream not of pain, but rage, raw and ancient, echoing through her bones. Evelyn covered her ears and dropped to the floor, the scream rattling inside her skull. Then just as quickly as it had begun, the sound stopped. The room fell silent. The door creaked open. She crawled out into the hallway, gasping. The East Wing was dark now, the overhead lights completely out. Behind her, room 616 was empty once again. No monitor, no chart, just dust and shadow. But as she fled back to the nurse's station, she didn't notice the figure watching her from the window of room 616. Its mouth moved silently, mimicking her name. The next morning, Evelyn didn't mention the incident to anyone. She wanted to, desperately, but what could she say? That she'd heard whispers in the walls and seen a ghost in room 616? An abandoned room no one even acknowledged anymore? She tried to return to her routine, but something had changed. The hospital seemed different, darker, heavier. She began noticing things she hadn't before, doors that were open when she was sure she'd closed them, medical charts that went missing, whispers echoing faintly from vents that should have been silent. By her third night shift that week, Evelyn had resolved to uncover the truth. She started digging through old hospital records during breaks, searching for mentions of room 616. She found almost nothing, except a name. Dr. Malcolm Reyes, a neurologist who had once overseen psychiatric patients in the East Wing, including the unknown man from room 616. Reyes had disappeared in 1999, the same year that patient was admitted. The last place he'd been seen? The hospital basement. Few staff ever ventured down there. It was a warren of old equipment, unused operating rooms, and archives buried beneath decades of dust. The maintenance crew avoided it. Nurses joked it was cursed. That night, Evelyn took her flashlight and badge and descended alone. The elevator groaned as it sank past the main floors. When the doors opened, the air felt colder, damp and stagnant. She passed old wheelchairs with broken wheels, surgical lights that hung like dead spiders from the ceiling. Her footsteps echoed off concrete walls. Then she found the old records room. Inside, the shelves were overflowing with files. She searched through boxes until she found a folder labeled Special Case 616. Inside were transcripts, observations, warnings. Subject claims to hear voices, refuses food, does not sleep. Staff report vivid nightmares after interacting with him. At the bottom of the file was a single photograph, the patient strapped to a bed, his face blurred in the picture, as if the camera had failed to capture him properly. Then came the sound. Footsteps. Not hers. Slow. Deliberate. Someone, or something, was walking down the hallway outside. Evelyn froze. The flashlight flickered, then went out. She held her breath. The footsteps stopped just outside the records room. Then a whisper. You shouldn't be here. The light flashed back on for just a second, long enough for her to see a man standing in the doorway. Tall, pale, his eyes completely black. The flashlight died again. When she finally ran out, lungs burning, the records folder clutched to her chest, there was no sign of anyone in the basement. But the elevator buttons had already been pressed. Someone, or something, was heading upstairs. Evelyn didn't sleep that morning. She sat at her kitchen table, the folder from the basement splayed open in front of her. The records confirmed everything. The unknown patient in room 616 wasn't just another psychiatric case. He'd been found wandering near a derelict church in the Bronx, incoherent, covered in dried blood that wasn't his. They never identified him. No ID, no fingerprints in any system, and no one ever came to claim him. Worse, every nurse, orderly, or doctor who had prolonged contact with him either quit, went missing, or died within months. Except for Dr. Reyes, who vanished entirely. The hospital had covered it up. Evelyn returned to St. Augustine that night, nerves raw, determination sharper. She had to know more. Why was she hearing voices? Seeing things? What had they brought into room 616 all those years ago? But the hospital had other plans. Just an hour into her shift, the intercom crackled with urgency. Code Black, East Wing, room 616, she froze. Code Black meant a violent patient. But room 616 wasn't supposed to be on the active list anymore. She ran. By the time she reached the East Wing, the hallway was bathed in red emergency lights. 2 security guards stood outside room 616, pale and visibly shaken. What happened? She asked. One guard shook his head. We heard screaming. The door was locked from the inside. Then, The lights blew out. He gestured toward the wall. Deep scratches ran along the doorframe, fresh as if clawed by fingernails. Evelyn's hands trembled as she stepped inside. The room was cold, ice forming on the corners of the window. The bed was overturned. On the wall above it, written in what looked like dried blood, were 3 words. He never left. A sound behind her, a whisper, sharp and raspy. You brought me back. She turned. No one. The temperature dropped again. Her breath misted in front of her. Then the door slammed shut, trapping her inside. The lights flickered. On, off, on again. Then she saw him, standing in the far corner of the room. Not moving, just watching. His face was more visible now. Sunken eyes, pale, stretched skin. A mouth that seemed too wide, pulled into something that almost resembled a grin. Evelyn stepped back. Who are you? The figure didn't respond. Instead, it took a step forward. And the monitor, long since unplugged, began to beep. Heartbeat, slow and steady. Then faster and faster, until it was screaming. Evelyn reached for the emergency call button, but before she could press it, the lights went out again, and something cold grabbed her wrist. Darkness, silence, then nothing. When security managed to open the door a few minutes later, the room was empty. The monitor was off. No blood on the walls, no patient, no doctor. Just her ID badge lying on the floor. Evelyn awoke in a hospital bed, but not in St. Augustine. This room was unfamiliar, older, colder, with faded wallpaper peeling at the corners. The air smelled of antiseptic and mildew. Her limbs felt heavy, her mind fogged. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming. Then she saw her reflection in a mirror across the room. Eyes sunken, hair disheveled, a small gash on her forehead. What? She whispered. A nurse entered. Her uniform was outdated, like something from the 1980s. She moved stiffly, eyes not quite meeting Evelyn's. You're awake, she said, placing a tray on the table. You were found in the East Wing, unresponsive. Which hospital is this? The nurse paused. St. Augustine. No, Evelyn said firmly. This isn't St. Augustine. Not anymore. The nurse gave a strained smile. Rest now, doctor. You'll feel better soon. She left without another word. The door clicked shut behind her. Evelyn sat up. Her body ached, but her mind was sharper. She remembered everything. Room 616, the voice, the figure, the freezing air, the grab in the dark. And now, this place. This version of the hospital didn't feel real. It felt trapped, like a memory someone forgot to erase. She tore the IV from her arm and stood. The hallway outside was dim, bathed in a pale green hue. No staff, no patients, just silence. She began walking. Every corner of this version of St. Augustine felt off, stretched, slowed, like a dream decaying at the edges. The signs on the walls were warped, the names smudged. Lights flickered in rhythmic pulses, almost like breathing. Then she heard it again. Evelyn. But this time it wasn't a whisper. It was a child's voice. She followed it to the pediatrics wing, where toys lay scattered and wheelchairs sat rusting in the corners. At the end of the hallway, a single examination room door stood ajar. She pushed it open. Inside, a boy sat on the floor, drawing on the tile with a piece of chalk. He looked no older than 8, pale, thin, eyes too wise for his age. Who are you? She asked softly. The boy didn't look up. He's watching you. Who? The man you woke up. You mean the patient from 616? The boy nodded, still drawing. He doesn't want to be alone. That's why he pulls people in. Evelyn knelt beside him. Where is this place? The boy finally looked at her, and for a moment, his eyes were hollow sockets filled with static. You're in the in-between, he whispered, where the lost go when they don't know they've been taken. A chill ran down her spine. Taken by who? The lights in the room blinked violently. The boy stood. He's coming. From the hallway came the unmistakable sound of dragging footsteps. Slow, scraping, closer. The boy turned to her one last time. You have to wake up before he finds your body. Then he vanished. Evelyn turned just in time to see the hallway twist, stretch, and from around the corner, a figure emerged. The man from room 616. Only now, his face was clearer, and he was smiling. Evelyn ran. The hallway behind her groaned and warped, walls bending inward like they were breathing. Lights burst overhead as she fled, popping in sparks, casting shadows that moved faster than her own. The sound of dragging footsteps followed, steady and patient, echoing louder with each step she took. She didn't look back. Every door she passed was locked. Every window showed only darkness. Then, finally, she found a stairwell. She hurled herself through the door and descended, the narrow staircase spiraling downward into a shaft that seemed to stretch far deeper than the real hospital ever went. It felt like she was running through a memory, a copy of St. Augustine warped by time, grief, and something far worse. She reached the bottom and stepped into another corridor, dimly lit with surgical lamps that buzzed like insects. This wing was different, older, abandoned decades ago, judging by the rusted gurneys and cracked floor tiles. And then she saw it, a room labeled Research Subconscious Containment Experiments. Evelyn pushed it open. Inside were rows of medical beds, restraints dangling from their sides. On one of the tables sat a file, its cover marked with a single word, tether. She opened it and skimmed through. Subject 616 demonstrates the ability to mentally project and trap others in overlapping psychological spaces. These spaces are constructed of stolen memories, dreams, and fears. Note, exposure too long results in complete cognitive overwrite. Subject appears tethered to a host body, but the body shows no measurable brain activity. Still, it refuses to die. Project terminated due to ethical violations. Evelyn's hands shook. They had studied him, tried to map his mind, tried to contain what wasn't human. He wasn't dead. He wasn't comatose. He was anchored, tethered to the hospital, feeding off those who got too close. Like her. She looked up. In the corner of the room stood a mirror. But her reflection wasn't moving. It stared back at her, wide-eyed, mouth slowly curling into a smile, not her own. Then it whispered, "He's already inside you." The lights burst. The door slammed shut. Evelyn turned to run, but this time there was nowhere to go. The walls began to ripple, the floor dissolving into shadow. Hands reached out from the cracks, skeletal, gray, grasping, pulling. She screamed and tried to resist, but the darkness rose fast, swallowing her feet, her legs, then light, bright and searing. She opened her eyes with a gasp. She was back, in the real hospital. A group of nurses stood over her, frantic. One of them clutched a defibrillator. "You flatlined," a nurse cried. "You were gone for 3 minutes." Evelyn tried to speak, but her throat was raw. Her eyes scanned the room. Clean, bright, real. But then her gaze settled on the corner. A mirror. And in it, just for a moment, her reflection stayed smiling, even after her face stopped. Evelyn was discharged the next morning, though the attending physician recommended a few days of rest. Extreme exhaustion, they said. Possible seizure episode. But Evelyn knew better. What happened in the East Wing wasn't a hallucination. It wasn't stress. It was a warning. Back in her apartment, everything felt altered. The lights seemed dimmer. Her walls too quiet. Even the ticking of her clock sounded unfamiliar. She found herself glancing into mirrors more than she should, each time half expecting to see that smirking reflection again. On the third night home, she awoke at 3:16 a.m. Something had pulled her from sleep. She sat up slowly. Her apartment was still. No sound, no movement. But there it was again, a faint pressure in the air like someone watching her. She turned her head toward the hallway and saw it, a figure, just beyond the doorway, standing still, too tall to be human. No face, just a shifting blur where eyes should be. She blinked. Gone. Heart racing, Evelyn stood and walked toward the doorway. Nothing was there. But when she looked at the floor, she saw it. Dust disturbed by footsteps that hadn't been hers. Leading from her bedroom, through the hall, to the bathroom mirror. She stepped inside, turned on the light. Her reflection stared back, pale and shaken. Then it smiled and raised its hand. She hadn't moved. With shaking fingers, she reached out and touched the glass. It felt cold, deeper than normal glass, like it led somewhere else. Then her reflection mouthed something. She leaned in and heard the words in her mind. "Let me in." She recoiled and backed away, heart pounding. The mirror shimmered like water, then stilled. She didn't sleep that night. The next day, she returned to the hospital. She needed answers, real ones. She slipped into the archives and searched for more on subject 616. Eventually, buried beneath a stack of old psych reports, she found a photo of a mirror with a note scrawled beneath. "Do not use reflective surfaces during containment. Subject mimics host through mirrors. Reflective exposure leads to mental bleed." Mental bleed. A merging of consciousness. That's why she kept seeing him, hearing him. He was inside her now, tracing the edges of her mind, waiting to come through. She left the hospital in a haze, but the moment she stepped outside, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. A whisper, deep and cold, slid into her ear. "You're not alone anymore, Evelyn." Then silence. Her reflection in the glass door of the hospital turned. She hadn't. Evelyn stopped looking into mirrors. Every reflective surface in her apartment, bathroom mirror, hallway decor, even the black screen of her TV, was covered with blankets or turned to the wall. She lived in shadows now, avoiding her own face. But it didn't help. The dream started next. Each night she found herself back in St. Augustine's East Wing. Only this time it wasn't abandoned. The halls pulsed with a dim red glow. Patients screamed behind closed doors. And Evelyn, dressed in an old nurse's uniform she'd never seen before, pushed a gurney down the hall. On it lay a man, his face bandaged, wrists tied. And always, always, he whispered her name. Till one night she jolted awake with dried blood beneath her fingernails. She hadn't been injured. She didn't know whose it was. Back at the hospital, her colleagues began treating her differently. Some avoided her altogether. Others glanced at her strangely, like they were unsure who they were talking to. "Evelyn," said Dr. Harrow, a seasoned neurologist who'd mentored her during residency, "you okay? You've seemed off lately. People are saying they've seen you in wings you weren't assigned to." Evelyn stared. "I haven't been anywhere near East Wing." Harrow frowned. "Funny, that's exactly where you've been seen." That night, Evelyn checked the security logs. Someone using her badge had accessed room 616 twice in the past 3 days. At times when she was home, sleeping, or thought she was. She went to the security office and requested the footage. The guard hesitated. "It's glitchy. You sure you want to see it?" She nodded. He played it. The grainy footage showed the East Wing corridor, long, empty. Then the timestamp blinked, and there she was, walking calmly toward room 616. But something was wrong. Her face was wrong, expressionless. Eyes too wide, movements stiff, mechanical, like a marionette with invisible strings. She walked to the door, turned toward the camera and smiled. Not a human smile. Something stretched, pulled. Then the screen went black. "No audio," the guard said nervously, "and the file corrupts right after that." Evelyn left the room in silence. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She was losing time. Someone or something was borrowing her. That night she returned home and found her front door ajar. She stepped inside. Everything looked untouched, silent, until she reached her bedroom. On the mirror, uncovered, exposed, words were scrawled in what looked like blood. "I'm almost you." Her reflection stood still. Even after she dropped the flashlight and backed away, it didn't blink. It just raised a finger and pointed behind her. Evelyn turned and screamed. Evelyn spun around, heart jackhammering in her chest. But there was no one behind her. Just emptiness. The hallway stretched on in a strange, impossible way. Longer than it should be. Shadows curled at the corners of her vision, and for a second she questioned reality. Was she still asleep? Still inside? The mirror behind her trembled, the glass warped like rippling water. Her reflection was no longer mimicking her. It was watching her, every movement deliberate, as if waiting for her to slip, to surrender. Evelyn slammed a towel over it and stumbled out of the bedroom. She couldn't stay here. Not tonight. She grabbed her coat and left her apartment, walking fast through the cold New York night. Neon lights blurred past her. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, over and over again. Unknown numbers, voicemails filled with static and faint breathing. At 2:33 a.m., she arrived at the only place she thought might hold answers, the sealed-off psychiatric sub-basement of St. Augustine. It had been closed for nearly 2 decades after a fire, but she had found an old maintenance badge in the archives. It still worked. The elevator groaned as it descended past the known floors. When it stopped, she stepped into darkness. Her flashlight beam cut across forgotten wheelchairs, rusted gurneys, and torn medical files strewn across the floor like dead leaves. Walls were scorched from old smoke damage, and the air was thick with mildew and something else, something metallic. She wandered deeper until she found it, a locked door with peeling letters that read, "Subconscious Mirror Testing Level 3. The padlock had already been broken. Inside were cracked one-way mirrors and restraints bolted to the floor. Journals lay open on the desks, filled with notes. Subject 616 replicates identities over time. Exposure to host reflection initiates psychological bleed. Containment protocols ineffective. Mirror must remain covered at all times." And beneath one note, in frantic handwriting, "It's not just in the hospital anymore. It's inside the city. Inside us." Suddenly, the flashlight flickered. A figure appeared behind one of the shattered mirrors. Evelyn froze. It looked like her, but older, paler, eyes bloodshot, a twisted mockery of herself. The reflection moved closer, pressing its hands to the glass. Then it whispered, "You open the door." The mirror cracked. Evelyn stumbled backward. The lights burst overhead. And in the flicker of emergency red, something stepped through the broken mirror. Not a person, not even human. It wore her skin, but its movements were all wrong, jerky, too fast, head tilting at unnatural angles. Evelyn ran, through the hall, up the stairs, out of the basement. She didn't stop until she reached the emergency ward, gasping for breath, surrounded by confused nurses and a frantic security guard. "You're not supposed to be down there," one of them said. "No one is. No one goes there anymore." Evelyn could barely speak, because now she knew. It wasn't just about the patient in room 616. It was about the mirror, and what had been waiting on the other side. Evelyn didn't sleep. Couldn't. By morning, her eyes were bloodshot, her hands trembling as she clutched a cup of black coffee in the hospital break room. The staff whispered when she passed now. Rumors spread. Evelyn screaming in her apartment. Evelyn seen talking to herself in the corridors. Evelyn vanishing into the East Wing at ungodly hours. But she wasn't crazy. Something had come through, and it was wearing her face. She had to find a way to seal it back. Her only lead was a former patient named Harold Keyes, once listed in the same ward as subject 616. He'd been discharged years before the ward closed, but his file included erratic sketches of mirrors, eyes, bleeding clocks, and a phrase repeated over and over: break the tether, seal the gate. She tracked him to a rundown care home in Queens. The nurse at the desk looked hesitant. He doesn't speak anymore. Not since the fire. Just sits in his chair all day, drawing. Evelyn was led into a small, dim room with one barred window. Inside, an old man hunched over a table, scribbling furiously with a dull pencil. The walls around him were filled with drawings, dozens of them, all of her. Not as she looked now, but twisted, in mirrors, melting, screaming. He looked up the moment she entered, and smiled. You're not her, he whispered. Evelyn froze. What do you mean? The other one. She's watching from the other side. Been watching ever since the doctors cracked his mind open. Who is he? Harold's eyes glazed with fear. The sleeper. 616. They tried to map his dreams, but dreams fight back. He's not dreaming anymore. He's inviting. Evelyn moved closer. How do I stop it? Harold looked at her, deadly serious. You need to find the original mirror, the first one they used to reach him. It's the only anchor. Destroy it, and maybe you'll cut the tether. She knew where it had to be. Sub-basement, the ruined lab, the mirror she'd seen crack when the thing stepped through. That night, armed with bolt cutters in sheer desperation, she descended again into the bowels of St. Augustine. Every step echoed with whispers. The hospital pulsed, alive with things that had no voices, only hunger. When she entered the lab, the mirror was waiting. But this time it wasn't cracked. It was whole again. And her reflection was smiling. Not mocking, not cruel, triumphant. From the far corner, the thing that wore her face stepped forward, limbs twitching, grins stretching wide. You can't kill what's already inside, it whispered. You brought me through, Evelyn. You fed me every time you looked. The mirror pulsed. The air thickened. Evelyn raised the bolt cutters. The thing lunged, and with a scream, she drove the tool into the mirror, glass exploding in a shower of shards and shadow. Light burst from the frame. The creature shrieked, convulsing, twisting as the mirror pulled it back into its prison. Then silence. Only her ragged breath and the distant hum of the hospital. She fell to her knees, surrounded by broken glass and flickering lights. She had done it, she thought. But in the corner of the ruined lab, one shard of the mirror still shimmered, and in it, a reflection blinked. Twice. Evelyn didn't leave the sub-basement immediately. She couldn't. The wreckage around her was too much. Shards of glass glinting in the flickering emergency lights. Shadows that seemed to stretch and move. It felt like the hospital was trying to swallow her whole. She crawled toward the shard that still gleamed faintly on the floor. Her hands were bloody, her nerves raw, but she couldn't leave it. Not yet. The shard shimmered with an unnatural light, and for a brief moment, she saw it again. Her reflection. Her true reflection. But it wasn't her, not anymore. This version of herself looked hollow, eyes blackened, skin ashen and cracked like porcelain. It smiled, no, grinned, a sick, twisted curve of its lips, its teeth sharp and broken. You thought you could stop it? It whispered, its voice a haunting echo. Evelyn recoiled, her heart hammering in her chest. She staggered back, her mind reeling. No, this couldn't be happening. She destroyed the mirror. She had to have destroyed it. But this wasn't just a reflection. It was something else, something that still existed, still reached. Her reflection's eyes moved, tracking her every motion. I never left, Evelyn. I was always here, waiting. You think you broke me? You only weakened the tether. A sharp pain shot through her skull. She gritted her teeth, hands clutching her head. Her reflection twisted again, laughing silently, its smile growing wider. She had to escape. She had to get out of this place, out of the hospital, away from the mirror. But as she stood, something caught her eye. Behind her, In the shadows of the wreckage, figures began to materialize. Distorted shapes. Faces she recognized, though warped and twisted. Former patients, colleagues, all of them trapped, pulled into the mirror's fractured web. Their eyes were wide with terror, their mouths open in silent screams. The creature that wore her face stepped forward, moving fluidly, as if it were born of the shadows themselves. It tilted its head, its expression one of amusement. "You never understood, did you? I'm a part of you now, always will be. The longer you resist, the more it hurts. You won't escape me, Evelyn. You can never escape the mirror." Evelyn's pulse raced. Her legs felt weak, the ground beneath her shifting like it was made of soft clay. She stumbled toward the stairs, each step a battle against the pull of the growing darkness behind her. She needed to leave, had to leave, before the creature consumed everything, before it completely took her. But she didn't make it far. At the top of the stairs, she collapsed to her knees, vision blurring. Her reflection was still there, watching from the shards, its grin now an all-consuming rictus. It was too strong, too entwined with her. Her hand reached out, trembling, to touch her forehead. And then she saw it. A sliver of light, faint and flickering, coming from an old journal on the ground. "Break the tether," it read. "Reflect and release, the final shattering." She grabbed it and read the rest. "The mirror is not the prison, Evelyn. It is the gateway. You must sever the connection at the source. Find the anchor." Her breath hitched. The answer was here. Somewhere. Somehow. And as the walls around her closed in, she knew what she had to do. Evelyn's heart raced as she clutched the journal in her hands, her mind spinning with the final pieces of the puzzle. The anchor, the source, the final shattering. She rose to her feet, her legs unsteady. The world around her bending and warping like a painting caught in the wind. The air was thick with the stench of decay and burning metal. The hospital's broken walls seemed to pulse, alive with the whispers of the countless trapped souls, patients, doctors, all of them drawn in by the mirror. The mirror. She turned back to the lab, where the remains of the shattered glass lay scattered across the floor. Her reflection's twisted smile haunted her, its eyes full of hunger. But Evelyn understood now. The mirror wasn't just a window into another world. It was a link, a tether that had bound the thing to her, to this place and to the city itself. And to sever that connection, she would have to do something unthinkable. She couldn't destroy the mirror. No, she had to destroy the reflection. And for that, she would have to face the thing she had let in. With trembling hands, Evelyn stepped toward the shards, the pieces of the mirror scattered across the floor. The creature, her reflection, moved closer, its grin widening, its eyes burning with malevolent intent. The air around it shimmered, as if the very space between her and the creature was pulling apart. "You're too late," it whispered. "I am you. I am inside you. There's no escaping." Evelyn closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. She couldn't let fear control her. She had already come too far. The creature had been feeding off her fear, her doubts, her hesitation. But now she was done running. She reached into the shattered glass and grabbed a jagged shard. The reflection in the mirror smiled. "No matter what you do, Evelyn, you're already mine." With a surge of willpower, Evelyn plunged the shard into the wall, right where the tether had anchored. The mirror cracked again, this time splintering into 1,000 pieces, each shard flickering with dark light, pulsing with the creature's essence. The reflection howled, but Evelyn didn't stop. She pressed the shard deeper, carving into the foundation of the mirror's magic. The walls trembled. The ground beneath her shook. And then with a deafening crash, the final shatter. The mirror exploded in a blinding flash of light. For a moment, Evelyn thought she might lose herself in the brilliance, swallowed by the very thing she had fought to destroy. But when the light faded, she was standing in the empty lab. The whispers were gone. The walls were still. The shadows had receded. The thing was gone. She collapsed to her knees, breath ragged, her mind reeling. The weight of it all, the terror, the madness, the destruction, hung over her like a dark cloud. She'd done it. She'd freed herself. But was it over? Could she truly escape? The answer came when she looked up. A figure stood in the doorway. Not a reflection. Not a shadow. Her, alive, flesh and blood. But there was something wrong. Her eyes were wide, too wide, her lips pulled into an unnatural smile. And then it spoke. "It's not over, Evelyn. You can't escape me." Evelyn's heart dropped. She stood up, backing away. No, it couldn't be. The creature had returned. But this time it wasn't trapped in a mirror, it had found a new vessel. Her own. The echo of her reflection wasn't just a curse. It was the final infection. A seed that would continue to grow, to spread. And Evelyn realized with cold clarity that she would never truly be free. Because the tether had always been inside her, and it always would be.